Hello.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Came back from a vacation a couple weeks ago. Well, I guess
Okay.
it's been a week and a half, right?
Is that it?
Yeah. It seems like it's been eons ago, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Now, we were just talking about suffering the consequences of going on a
Oh yeah, the
vacation.
payback period. Oh my
Payback
gosh.
period.
It is the worst. Yeah. You feel like, why did I even bother going on vacation?
I
Because I
know.
have to
I
do
was
all this
re-stressed out
makeup,
again. How do we fix that?
I
What do
don't
we
know.
do?
I don't know.
I wish we could
Get
figure
in a
it
different
out.
business, I guess, we could just go back. If you work for the
I
government,
guess.
you could just go back and everything,
Pick up
you
where
just
you
pick
left
up where you
off.
left off.
You
There's
know,
nothing.
I don't know if that's true. I have a friend
Really?
that works for a city attorney's office, and her work just piles up. while
Okay,
she's
yeah, an
gone,
attorney's
you
office.
know.
But I mean, what if you're just like pushing permits or something,
I
for
guess
something,
so, yeah.
Someone else pushed the permits
All
while you
right,
were
well,
gone, you're good.
I'm going to submit my resignation and go work for the state.
There you go. Yeah.
Just kidding.
Okay. Well, I may be first.
Well, I'm really excited about something that we've been working on. Actually, we have a new ebook available, The Investment Answer. It's a really awesome book about investing, obviously, and it's from an evidence-based approach. It's a super easy read. You can get through it in an evening for most people. And if you want to understand more about our investment approach, you can get your complimentary electronic copy of the book from us.
Yep.
And it's in the details in the show notes. For that, if you want to order it from us.
That's great. Yeah. And it's also, people have they labor under a lot of misunderstanding about how investing is supposed to work.
Yeah.
And what actually works and what doesn't. So this clears all that up. It's really good. Yeah, really. Okay. So welcome to A Place of Possibility. We are glad you are here. I am Richard Del Monte.
I'm Angela Wright.
Thank you for being here with us. So what are we talking about today, boss?
Today we're talking about real estate
investing.
More real estate investing.
That's great. It's a great topic.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Well, most people assume that becoming the owner of income producing property, whether that's like a residential rental or a commercial property, is only for rich people. And I think especially disillusioned are the younger generations, the millennials and the Gen Z, who are looking at home prices saying, you guys really screwed us up. We can't do anything here.
It is common. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, we're going to share some ideas that make this accessible to everybody today. And we've got some really creative stuff.
Yep. Great. And the opportunities have always been there all along for decades, but they're even a little bit better now because the real estate market has shifted a little bit in favor of the buyers, right?
Yeah.
The sellers can no longer demand their offer price plus some gigantic offer, and they run the show. It's now more of a balanced.
How quickly it changes.
Boy, isn't that something?
Earlier
right?
this year, where we're like, how are you going to get into a house?
Great. People have time to actually look at something and see if they want it or not and think about it.
And, so a lot of people are like, why would I even want to own real estate? Oh, the horror stories of nightmare tenants and having to, get calls in the middle of the night and water leaks and there's mold and cigarette butts. I mean, like the stories go on and on.
Yeah, the tenant from hell.
Sounds like a pain. Why would I want to deal with that?
That's a good question that people probably are asking themselves that. And I think that one of the big reasons is because that it goes bad is that they end up managing the property themselves. And they don't know what they're doing. They haven't had any experience doing that. They're not professionals. And so they end up with doing things like, choosing the tenant that they're going to sign a lease with in the wrong manner. And it ends up being in a discriminatory manner that the potential tenant that didn't get selected could sue you on, and you'll lose. Or there could be something where you didn't actually do your credit check on the potential tenants, or an eviction skip survey or screen. And so you can avoid those things. You can really get really quality tenants. And the way to do that is with a good professional property management firm.
Yeah. I thought I would save myself the 10% and not hire a property manager. And I paid my dues for a couple of years on that. And I have to say that getting a property manager is well worth the money. Yeah. Not only do they save me a bunch of time and headaches, but they save me money because they have relationships with contractors and handy people. And, they know how to get a deal on carpet.
Yep.
And then, furthermore, they keep encouraging me to raise the rent and they make sure that my house is always occupied. And so in the end, the net benefit has been tremendous of having a property manager. Real estate can be a great way to build your wealth and to have something that can last for generations as an income production machine for your family. So today we're going to show you how to get started with some creative ideas. Most people just really don't know how to get started. But if you're a little bit intrepid and entrepreneurial, There's maybe a little bit of a calculated risk that you're taking every time you buy a property.
Yep.
You can do it. And in previous podcasts, we've talked about purchasing a home for yourself. So if you're interested in that, please go check that podcast out. And there are even some programs here in California that will allow you to get into a home with 3 to 5% down. You can get up to 10% of your home's equity through a state program, just free money, giving it away here if you meet certain
loans.
Yes, income requirements. And then you can also get your closing costs paid for up to like $25,000 you can get in closing costs. So you could walk into your own primary residence today if you don't already have one for basically nothing out of pocket. It's pretty awesome.
Yep.
But if you want to learn more about real estate investing, stay here. We're going to talk about it. I just want to mention one thing for the people out there who are like, oh, this is everything that's wrong with housing today. The rent seekers. And what I mean by that is, people who buy up properties that would otherwise be owned by would-be homeowners, and charge exorbitant rents. And, that definitely happens, especially when you look at private equity companies. But I just want to say, if you're the landlord, you're in control of how you treat your tenants and how much rent you charge. And so if this is something that you're worried about, why not get in the game and treat your tenants well? I don't raise the rent on my tenants to the maximum my property manager tries to make me, and I don't do it. And you can also be a really good and fair landlord to people who need housing.
Yeah, so you can be the solution, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, while you're doing well for yourself.
Yes.
Okay, good. So today what we're going to do is we're going to share with you some very novel and creative ways to purchase rental property for your own investment portfolio. You probably know when you buy real estate, you typically have to put down 25% of the purchase price for rental real estate, because it's not the same as a home where you can put down 5 to 10% even, or 20.
Yeah.
And so it's usually hard for people to come up with 25%, right? It's a big number, especially in California. It's, $250,000. I mean, it's really out of reach for people. But those are for conventional financing options. So that's like if you get a loan from a bank or a professional, a corporate lender. Most people do not really know that you can also ask the sellers to lend you the money. They can be the mortgage company. Yeah, absolutely.
Why would a seller want to do that?
Well, great question. You may be asking yourself that. The reason is because if a seller sells a home, let's say they have a home that they bought, many, many years ago in California, they bought it for $30,000 and now they sold it for $1.5 million. And let's say with improvement stuff they made over the years, they've got $1 million profit. Mm. They may be paying $400,000 of capital gains tax on that amount of sale, which, that's a lot of money, right? But if they were to instead do an installment sale, which is basically where the seller loans you the money to buy the house, then they get to spread the capital gains out over the entire term of the loan. So if they give you a 30-year loan, they're going to take $30,000 a year instead of 300 or $1 million of profit, and it might even be that they have no tax at all to pay in that situation. So they can save themselves $400,000 of tax. And for the situation where people are like an older couple, I did a situation where an older couple was selling an apartment building in Utah many years ago, 20 years ago, and I asked the guy to do a seller carryback where he loaned me the money to buy it, and he said yes, because instead of having to deal with the day-to-day hassles of the property and the tenant problems and, like you said, water leaks and all that stuff, he traded that for a $5,000 flat monthly income for me for 30 years, which is basically like a pension for him. And if I defaulted, he got the property back.
Yeah.
So he was happy.
Yeah.
And then he avoided that whole tax, the capital gains tax.
If I'm a seller, I might be worried about qualifying you for the loan like a bank would. How would you do that?
Yeah, good question. So there are tools that you can use. You want to do a credit check, and you can go to the landlord. What's it called?
The landlord protection
agency, where you can get form. The client, the buyer just has to fill out a form, gives you permission to pull their credit, and you can do that through many sources. And you can also do eviction skip checks. You can do criminal backgrounds, all that stuff, and see what kind of people that you're actually potentially putting in this place.
Yeah.
Buying the house from you.
Right.
So, but you can avoid that tax completely. And so this kind of thing, these kind of approaches, the sellers might not even be aware that they can spread out the tax over a period of time.
A lot of people.
They might just think, I got to sell it. That's how it is. I got to pay the tax. Well, maybe not. And so for you as the buyer, you want to go in and you want to ask questions about your seller. What does he need? What do he or she need? What are they trying to accomplish? Are they trying to get retirement income? Well, would they consider this, like an installment sale? They can make way more money. It's not going to work in every single case, but there are certainly a number of them that will work. You have to be patient. You have to keep asking, but you want to look for problems you can solve for people. What kind of problems does the seller have that you have an opportunity to solve with some creative financing, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have one that's reluctant, one of the things that you can use right now is them being emotionally tied to their home's worth earlier this year.
Yeah, with the peak.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people still feel like, oh, I should be getting 1.2, with multiple offers on this place. They put their home on the market and they're not getting it.
Right.
And so you can use that to your advantage by saying, okay, if you're willing to do the installment sale with me, I will pay you 5-10%, over its current market value. I'll give you the January 1 value of this property. And, paying a higher price.
Heresy.
Listen, here's the thing, right? Paying a higher price is nowhere near as big a deal as, some people would have you make it out to be. And we fret right over like 0.25% in purchase price. I mean, we lose so much sleep over this, but the reality is if you're purchasing a rental property, your tenants are paying for that property for you. They're paying the extra, 5%. It's not on you. And over the grand scheme of your lifetime and the income that you get back from this property, it's nothing.
It's chump change.
Yes.
Honestly.
And so, if you're not able to buy the property the usual way because you don't have the 25% to put down or you can't qualify for this jumbo rental loan, this is how you can do it. And in 15, 20 years, it won't matter that you paid an extra 5% for the property because you're in.
Right.
Yeah.
So think out of the box. You have to think out of the box. So here's an example. One time I was trying to buy a house in Danville and I was always trying to buy more than I could afford. Right. And so I asked the seller of this house to give me 10%, to loan me 10% for 5 years. So I put down 10%. I got 10% from the seller. And then we've got an 80% loan. Well, she said, no, I don't want to do that. And at that time it was like $60,000. And so, I thought, okay, well, so what I came back to her and said, what if I give you an extra $12,000 for the purchase price? And she realized right away, for me to loan this guy $50,000 or $60,000, I'm going to get an extra 20% on that 60,000 just to loan the money for 5 years. Yeah, I think I can probably do that because if I take that 60,000 and put it in the bank, I'm not going to make that kind of return, right? I was giving them interest on top of that. So she said yes. And so it ended up, I paid an extra $12,000 for the house, big whoop, because I sold it 10 years later for a $700,000 profit. Imagine if I hadn't gotten the house because I didn't think to offer her $12,000 more to get it. Yep. And she didn't think to say, okay, I'll do that.
Yep.
So you got to think creatively and find a way to sweeten the pot for them so they will agree to your terms.
Yep.
Right. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay. So another thing you can do in addition to seller financing is look outside of the state of California.
Please.
So I will tell you, there aren't a lot of great rental real estate opportunities here in the Bay Area if you're not a giant venture capital firm. It's super tough. And I know it sounds really scary to buy a home in another state, maybe even one that you don't have time to go out and look at, right? You have a property manager looking at it for you. But, in the rest of the country, housing prices are much more manageable. Like, if you look in the Midwest, like in a rural town, you might find something for $70,000 to $100,000, a single family home.
What?
Yes,
True.
they still exist.
It's absolutely true. Yep.
Till the Californians come in and jack the prices.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
There are some challenges, but these places still rent for $900 to $1,000 a month. So there's some positive cash flow situations available for you. So if that's the case, you only need to come up with 25% down, right? It's not unheard of to have $25,000 available to you. Yeah. We'll talk about some other ways you can get this in a moment. So, okay, you put $25,000 down. You've got a property worth $100,000 and you're making, $900 to $1,000 a month on it. When you include the tax savings and the mortgage pay down that the tenants are making for you, you've got a 16% rate of return on your money.
on your 25,000.
Yes. When was the last time you saw that in the stock market?
That's really unheard
Sustained.
of. Right.
Right. It's unheard of. And then if you include, like, let's say home prices go up by about 3%, which is a historical average, your appreciation jumps to 28%. Really good returns on your money here. Just for thinking a little bit outside the box or the L shape in the state of California. So, I mean, how long is it going to take you to get wealthy with a compounding 28% return?
Yep. And, the returns are astronomical. And I think I can imagine if there's professional real estate investors out there listening to this are like, why are they giving away our secrets?
Go away.
Because most people don't know about this, that these are out there, but they're so accessible for people. So how do you come up with the $10,000 to $25,000 down payment for one of these, rural pads? And, we got these numbers from a property that was in rural Ohio, not West Virginia, but it's in Ohio. It's in a nice area near Indiana, near Indianapolis. Sorry. Yeah. So here's some creative ways to get your hands on $20,000 to $25,000. You can borrow it from your 401k. I know what you're going to say.
Don't do it. No, we're usually giving the opposite advice.
Yeah. So you can borrow. The terms are you pay yourself interest. So the interest might be 5 to 6% interest, and the money goes to you, not to some bank. It goes into your 401k. You're eligible to borrow 50% of your account balance up to $50,000, right? Mm-hmm. And your spouse can do the same thing. So if you potentially get $100,000 out of your 401k plans to buy 4 of those houses right out of the chute, right? Yeah. I'm not saying you should do that right out front. Maybe you should get your feet wet, but it's accessible.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say, kind of the asterisk, who should not do that?
She always has the asterisk.
Well, compliance over here. Right. It's not for everybody, right? Yeah. If you're 40 years old and you're just starting to contribute to your 401k plan, you have no other assets and you've got, $40,000 in that plan, probably best to leave it there and let it grow. Because one thing that you miss out on is the compound growth of that money, right? You probably would have it invested more aggressively in your 401k. You'd earn more than the 5% that you're paying yourself. So the time out of the market for that money might not be worth it for you. But let's say you're a couple and you've been saving in your 401ks for 20 years and that's where all of your assets are.
Yeah.
And you can't really manage. You've got 3 little kids in daycare and you can't manage to save outside of that. Then, you've got a couple $100,000. Now pulling 50,000 isn't going to be as detrimental to your retirement plan.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, good. Yeah. So the second way is if you have a house, borrow some of the home equity out, use a home equity line of credit or HELOC and use that for the down payment on the new property. You can also borrow money from a relative or a friend who is, I'll call them affluent, and they have that kind of money in their bank and they're getting 0.05% at Chase or Wells Fargo. And you can solve a problem for them that they might not even be thinking that they have. Whereas you can get them a much higher interest rate on their savings, and it can be really well secured because you can give them a lien on your property or even on your own house to guarantee that if you don't pay them back, they get to take the house. Pretty secure, right? So you have to, these things are usually for 3 to 5 years, the loans, and the interest rates are negotiable, whatever you can get away with. I mean, again, you're solving a problem. What's it going to take them to be able to take the money out of the bank and give it to you to buy this property and feel secure about it and feel good, like it's a good deal for them. So you may have to give them, right now, I just saw interest rates on mortgages is 6%, across 6%. You may have to give them 6.5%, or maybe it's a friend or a family member. They'll do it for 3 or 4. I don't know, but you got to test the water and see what they'll do.
And it's better than not having the loan because remember, again, your tenants are paying that 6.5% off.
Right.
No, you're not necessarily
not you.
out of pocket.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. And I think, one important point here is that when you're first starting out, you might have to endure, a little pain in your wallet. Like if you do take that 401k loan, you're paying that back via, a deduction from your paycheck. So for maybe up to 5 years, you have to restrict your budget a little bit in order to pay that back. But once you get this ball rolling, you get some equity in your properties, rent increases year over year, it starts to be slushy. There's some wiggle room there.
Yeah.
And, or, you're paying your 401k loan and then next year you get your cost of living adjustment at work or you get a promotion. Suddenly, that's wiped out and you've got the money back in your pocket again.
Yep. So let's give you an example from a client that we know. So this actually occurred, and we were involved in the process the whole way. This client bought an initial property from their from their parents back in the early 90s. And so I'm going to give you the numbers just so you can follow through. The parents wanted to sell the house to the kid, and the kid was going to use it as a rental. The parents wanted 190,000. The kid said, loan it, sell it to me for 210 and make a gift to me of the $20,000 in advance. I'll put it in my account, and it's a gift. I don't really get back to you. But when we end up closing the deal on the house, you're going to get $20,000 more than you wanted for the house. So you're basically whole. They did it. The house appraised for 210. So this kid ended up buying the house for nothing down. Then the kid waited. Fast forward a few years, like 7 or 8 years went by, and the kid wanted to buy a rental apartment building in Utah, for example. And so he bought that house from a seller who was willing to do an installment sale to finance the property, but he had to come up with $100,000 down. So he borrowed the $100,000 from the house he bought from mom and dad and put it into the apartment building. So still he owns 2 properties, and there's none of his own money in it yet, right? It's all borrowed money. So then the tenants are paying the mortgage on that. The tenants are paying the mortgage on the first house. Everybody's happy. You go forward another 10 years. Let's see, 20 years, 15, to about, I guess it was about 20 years. And then all of a sudden the property in Utah was worth $2 million, and it was paid off, basically paid off. And he has all this equity. And then he had the opportunity to buy another property in Idaho for a brand new property that was a 24-plex. The one in Utah was a 10-plex. And he could buy that for $2.7 million, but he had to put down $800,000 to get the loan. Guess what? He borrowed the $800,000 from his 10-plex and put it down on the 24-plex. He now owns 36 apartment buildings, and houses, doors basically, and he has none of his own money in it yet.
That's pretty amazing.
And at this point, he is now clearing $25,000 a month in rental income after all expenses and mortgages are paid. And think about this, which I know this is bad for the rent thing you were mentioning, but if the next time rents go up by $100 a month times 36 doors, he's going to get $3,600 a month more from $100 rent increase. This was all created by patience and creative thinking, and he didn't have any money to start with to do this.
A little luck. His parents had a little money.
Yeah, so, you got to start, but it could have been a 401k loan or something.
Yes.
That the person could have made it work on, right?
Yeah,
so there's just lots and lots of ways to make it work.
I remember one of the things that you had to counsel this client on was not leaving equity fallow, basically in a home. And so, you've got the Susie Ormans and the Dave Ramseys of the world preaching, pay off all debts, pay off all debts. And that's true if you're buried in credit card debt at 24%, but mortgage debt is a different animal. And it doesn't really make sense to have, $2 million sitting in equity in an apartment building doing nothing for you, maybe growing at 3% a year.
Yeah.
Why not access that and leverage it into another property that's going to give you a much higher rate of return in terms of rents? And so, he had to wrap his brain around the idea of basically never allowing a property to have more than 25% equity. And once it does, he shaves it off and he invests it in a new property. Once he gets enough, to get into a new property.
He goes shopping. And now it's been 3 years since he bought that last property, and he's made $1 million on the Idaho property, and he's made another $500,000 on the Utah property. So guess what? He's going to borrow it out and go buy some more houses. He'll probably have 40 doors in the next few years. And
my old ways of thinking, I would be saying to you right now, oh my God, that's so much debt.
I know.
Like, what if one of these you lose tenants and you default on the property? Guess what? You lose one property.
You just sell it.
You're not dead. And that's the thing. I think this anti-debt mentality has taught me, like child of the 80s, don't pay cash for everything, was like, I'm going to go down if I get into a situation where I can't pay for one of my properties. But that's not true. My 401k is fine. The rest of my assets are fine. My other rentals are fine. I have to sell one property and move on.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And conservative people might say, I only want to have, I want to always have 40% equity, not just 25. The conservative approaches say we'll have 60% debt and 40% equity. That way, even if the apartments or that I own or the properties I own are only 60% rented, I can still break even.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But so you can make it as conservative as you want, but just leaving it sit there and wanting to pay everything off is not the wisest way.
Right.
It's just not.
Right.
You want to use leverage to be able to grow your assets. They can actually grow exponentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are our most creative tips for how to get in on rental real estate if you don't have the down payment available. And, that's how it's done. If you're willing to take reasonable and calculated risk, look for opportunities and possibilities, if you will, you can create a lot from nothing in this industry, especially if you're patient and you keep at it, for a couple of decades over your lifetime. Anyone listening to the podcast could do this.
Yep. A friend of mine, I went to Chico State. You went to Chico State.
Okay. Go out.
He started buying rental units back when we were like 40 years ago when I got out of there. And he now has more than 100 units.
He's the king of Chico, basically.
Yeah, he is. He's all student housing. So just remember, the keys are to look for problems that you can solve for the people that you're doing the business with. So your buyers, your lenders, your private lenders that you might know, and use sweeteners. Give them a little bit more so you can make the deal work and think outside the box. You can totally do this. It's like riding a bicycle, and you will actually be, like Angela said, astonished at what you can create over time.
True. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about real estate. If you have any questions, please feel free to write to us. We also take topic ideas all the time. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we have a new ebook to share with you, The Investment Answer. Please let us know if you'd like a copy of that. If you want to schedule an appointment with us, you can click on the link in the show notes to do so. We'd be happy to meet with you. Please rate and review, but only if you like this podcast.
Yeah, we don't want to hear from you if you don't like it.
But, go on Apple Podcasts and give us a rating and review if you like it. And in 2 weeks, join us. We have Brian Truett, a local insurance broker and hero, in my opinion.
Yep.
He's going to come on and talk all about property insurance, which is becoming especially relevant here in California with all of the fires. People are losing their insurance. Brian knows everything there is to know. He's also a really fun guy. And I'll tell you the story of how he saved my bacon recently.
Yeah, he saved mine too. Because I was one of the people that got canceled because of fire danger.
I know. That's going to be a really great show.
Don't figure that out. So So until next time, thank you very much for being with us. Until next time, remember, you're invested and so are we.
Take care.
Thanks very much.